Hello, and thanks for joining us. I'm Richie Luntz, aka Screwball, and this is our Boston Red Sox show. Myself and my co-host Joey Buchholz will be joined today by our friend Mitch, and we'll talk about the Boston Red Sox. So, without further ado, let's play ball. Joe, first of all, how are things?
Things are good. Thank you, Richie.
Good, good. Like, I'm glad that was like one of those short replies because I've been listening to a lot of American podcasts to try and get used to how you speak more than anything. Not you personally, Americans in general, and they seem to leave their guests sat there for a long time, just listening to the intros of the shows and everything's going on. Yeah, we're not here to do that. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Mitch. Mitch, how are things?
Richie, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for coming on. It's an absolute pleasure to have you there. So, we know a bit about Joe from the last show. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, Mitch? How did you become a Red Sox fan?
Sure. Born and raised in Boston. I lived the first 14 years of my life in Boston. My dad lived in Boston for practically his whole life and in Massachusetts for his whole life. And so when you're born there, it's in your blood. It's part of who you are. So even though I moved to Milwaukee and I've been now in Milwaukee a lot longer than I lived in Boston, when you're born and raised there, like I say, it's religion. It runs through your blood, and that's just who you are. So the Red Sox fandom is certainly strong in me and my family.
Certainly do get that sense with the Red Sox. This is going to be a bit of a different podcast for us because this is I've actually been to Fenway. It's the only ballpark I've actually attended. So I definitely have a more of an insight than I will do on other shows. Just at this point, I know we usually do shout outs at the end, but I just want to bring a few Red Sox fans in that I've spoken to on Twitter quickly, just so they can sort of feel like they're going on this journey with us. So there was the Pesky Report. Spoke to Brad, who seemed like a nice guy. Bailey Von Schneider, Gloucestershire Red Sox, should say. UK Red Sox, and Emma Badger Noble. So they're all very welcome as well. And big part of this is to feel like we're part of something because there's a lot of hyperbole in sports and cliches and things like that, but baseball really does feel a lot like a family. Mm-hmm. And as much as it can, do you know what I mean? Because with certain sports, you seem to, or I feel like there's more animosity and less respect for the game, which is a big reason why I came to baseball in the first place. And I just wanted to touch on that before we really got started. And also, just since it's the first show, how we got where we are. So I spun the wheel. Boston Red Sox came out first on that wheel. So
as they should come first.
So it was completely fate. Even though it is the only team that I've seen the Indians and the Red Sox. But I genuinely 100%, JoBu can back me up on this. There was there wasn't a meeting beforehand, nothing happened, and it was literally just spun the wheel. And we're going to stick with the AL East and go through all the teams. So just to bring Joe in quickly, what's your overview of the Red Sox? If you had to give a very kind of brief idea of what you think of when you think of the Red Sox.
So actually, people identify me as the baseball polygamist, being a Mets and a Brewers fan, but there's actually Red Sox in my family. My grandfather, Nicola Conigliaro, was second cousins with Tony Conigliaro. And you notice how I pronounced the name two different ways there. There's the Sicilian way which I pronounce it, and then the Americanized version. But okay. I've always felt close to the Red Sox because of that. And then I forget the year. Mitch can probably help me on this one. I think it was 08 or 07. when Clay Buchholz threw a no-hitter in his second major league start that night, and I was still using a BlackBerry at that point. I probably received about 20 text messages asking if he was related. He's not, but because of those two reasons, and my mom actually is a big Red Sox fan, I've always felt a closeness to that team.
Awesome. I think, again, that kind of plays into what we were saying. Obviously, you've got that connection family-wise, but I think it's easier to feel a connection with baseball teams, and that's kind of where the podcast came from. Mitch, if you're looking, we're going to go into our first inning now. For those that don't know, didn't listen to the prologue or for whatever reason, we do 9 innings. Each inning has a reason, not so much a reason, something related to the ball club. And the first one is payroll and current team rundown. Give us an idea. So obviously payroll is fluctuating, of course, given the nature of baseball. But looking at where the Red Sox, I believe, I haven't got it in front of me, which is a bit remiss on my part, but I think they're like top 7 at the moment. Is that roughly around?
That sounds about right. I mean, the Red Sox are almost always in the top 10, if not the top 5 in payroll. Years that they are expected to compete, they are in the top 5, if not the top 3. And then years that they are not competing, they're generally still in the top 10. They're known as spenders. They're known as a team that pays a lot, probably overpays for some of its free agents when it signs guys. But on the flip side, they also recently made the decision to trade Mookie Betts in the last year or so to the LA Dodgers because they didn't want to pay him one of these, 10 to 12 to 15-year contracts, which is a questionable decision because what they got back from him was good, but probably not as good as he would have been. He was a fan favorite. He was a World Series champion. And so while the Red Sox, I think their current payroll is something like in the 180 millions. It's been over 200 million in the past. Yep. For the product that's on the field, it's probably worth half of what they're paying because they're not very good right now. But they are known as one of those top spenders. And part of that, as is they own football. They own a football club in England. They own a racing team in America. The Fenway ownership group, which just added LeBron James in the past week or so, is much more than just the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you should mention the football team because it's actually the football team I support, Liverpool Football Club. So obviously we've got that link there. In terms of what you're saying there, it's not for me to say either way, but I can only say from my perspective, do I believe that the addition of Mookie Betts, paying him over the next 10 years would have been a good idea? Player-wise, yes, 100%. But in terms of what I know of the Red Sox lineup, which isn't all that much, but just from what I've heard and read, is he enough to push you over the edge? No, I don't think he is. And I think a lot of people are saying that the Fenway Sports Group are cheap and should have paid them and all that. I actually think it's a good decision to let him go because I don't think that they would have been in a position to challenge. And I think what the Red Sox do, there's a lot of poor me about the Red Sox at the moment, some of the fans. And I think they're just a lot smarter than the fans. Basically, they knew that they weren't going to compete at the level that they expect to compete, which is World Series or bust. And they decided to instead, get some young prospects and allow the club to grow again, at which point they will spend again. They've shown that they'll spend the money. They're not cheap. I don't agree with this idea that they're cheap. And they've done very much the same at Liverpool. And again, the Liverpool fans, or a certain group of Liverpool fans, are also against the ownership and saying that they're cheap. When you actually break it down, nothing could be further from the truth.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're spot on, especially in terms of baseball. One player doesn't make that difference. And as much as we loved Mookie Betts in Boston, having Mookie Betts on this team right now might mean the difference between 4 or 5 wins over the course of the season. But if they finished 15 games out of first place, 4 or 5 games doesn't really matter that much. If you have the pitching staff, the pitching is not that good right now. And so it probably doesn't make sense. But emotionally, you're spot on. Emotionally, we miss Mookie. Like, Mookie was our guy. Mookie came up with the Red Sox. I was reading a book about, I want to say it was the Houston Astros and their road to their World Series championship. And there were in that book, there was a guy in the Astros organization who came up through the Boston organization and actually tried to trade for Mookie when he was like a double-A second baseman.
Wow.
And was willing to overpay because he knew how good Mookie was. And the Red Sox turned it down. So it's like Mookie came up through the Red Sox organization. He was he was a good guy. He was fun, and he was an MVP. So that he's so that one player doesn't make that big of a difference is true on the field. But I just think like he's missed, and seeing the Dodgers win the World Series last year is not a happy occurrence. Because now Mookie has, he's not a Red Sox anymore. He's definitely a Dodger, and who knows what he's going to do over the next 10 years of his career.
I mean, well, for myself, the Red Sox sort of starts and ends with Xander Bogaerts. I'm just looking at the payroll now. He is the highest paid player at the Red Sox, which I personally believe he should be. I am biased because he hit the second ever home run that I ever saw. So the first was actually Edwin Encarnacion going back to Fenway. So yeah, that I'll never forget that. But yes, Xander Bogaerts is my favorite player without a shadow of a doubt. And in the last game, obviously, he stretched a triple. I'm trying to get the vernacular right here so this will sound really awkward, but he stretched the triple and then on the error actually scored at home plate from what I remember.
So I believe he hit it was technically a double.
It was a double
then he went to third on the throw and scored on the error. Yep.
So how, I've heard the expression inside the park home run. Yeah. How is that not? Why is it? Because there was an error on the play, or is it
exactly? Yeah, it's because there's an error, and because you can advance on a throw without it being that. And Joey, you can explain this too, but an inside the park has to be a pure, the ball's bouncing around or the outfielder misplays it, but it's not an error. If there are errors, and overthrows happen all the time. A guy hits a single and goes second on the throw because there was a play at the plate. It's not ruled a double; it's ruled a single, and you advanced to second on the throw. That's what happened with Bogaerts. He advanced to third on the throw, then advanced home on an error, which is still awesome. I mean, I was watching it with my 10-year-old, and she said, "Daddy, that's just like an inside the park home run." Knowing that it wasn't an inside the park home run, but she was still super. It's still a super exciting play. That it gives the impression of the aura of an inside the park home run. It's still super exciting.
It's actually a beautiful thing that you've brought up there, because I want to bring in Joe obviously now. But what happened in the prologue was he said that him explaining baseball to me and watching me learn the game is like what he did with his kids. And what you've just explained there is exactly the path that I was following. So myself and your 10-year-old were both in it. Like, okay, so we know that that's an inside the park, but we know that it's not. And I just love the way that kind of perfectly illustrates the metaphor that Joe was going for. So Joe, what you think?
So we commonly refer to what Bogarts did as a little league home run.
Oh, okay.
Because he basically, like Mitch said, it was a double. He advanced the third on the throw. He advanced the home on the air. And anyone who played Little League baseball has probably hit one or two of those where they know in their heart of hearts they hit a double, but they're telling the kids at recess the next day, I hit a home run.
And there's a lot of Little League nuances like that as well that Richie, we could get into probably in future episodes.
Yeah.
But I know like my nephew's playing Little League right now, and every time there's a wild pitch and a player goes to the next base, they rule that as a stolen base. Well, that's not a stolen base. That's a wild pitch. But you know what? They're 9, so let them have it.
Listen, I'm 38. I'm taking it. If I get it, I'm taking it.
Exactly.
So, like you say there, it's good that you're mentioning like the future of the show as well, because these 30 episodes are going to be like extended prologues. It's basically me learning the game and learning all about the teams, and then there's going to be episodes after that where we just talk about baseball. I'm going to try and squeeze some of that into this episode at the end. But yeah, it was good that you brought that up. If I had to push you for a current favorite player, and best prospect, you can have a pitcher and an outfielder. I'm feeling generous. And best prospect, outfielder, and pitcher. Which 4 are you giving me?
Oh man, I don't know if I've broken down the prospects quite like that. My current favorite player, you mentioned Xander Bogaerts, and I often am partial to shortstops. I played shortstop as a kid and in high school a little bit. And so I generally do like shortstops. So Xander Bogaerts might be one of my favorite players. It's tough to have a favorite player on this team though, because none of these guys have been around for that long. I mean, I look at a pitcher like Nathan Eovaldi, who hasn't done anything for the Red Sox except he was amazing in the World Series.
Yeah,
like he's been a failed pitcher his whole career, and he had like 1 month of greatness, and so I really like him, and I really appreciate him for what he did in that World Series. But it's hard to say like, oh, he's my favorite. There's a guy, Tanner Houck, who just made the team, who's kind of still a prospect, who I really like. And I think he could be really good. But right now it's tough. The prospect that I really want to be my favorite, who is a prospect, is a guy named Jeter Downs. He's a shortstop
from LA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know if he's my favorite prospect, but I want him to be my favorite prospect because I want that trade to have meant something.
Yeah.
I want that. And it's weird that his name is Jeter because I assume he was named after Derek Jeter, who's like one of the all-time Yankees. And Derek Jeter had an interesting relationship with the Red Sox because he's one of the Yankees who's not completely hated. Most Yankees are totally reviled. Derek Jeter played the game with such respect that Red Sox fans, I think, certainly we hate him, but we don't hate him, if that makes sense. But Jeter Downs is that guy that I want to end up being an all-star. I want to end up being a superstar because I want to show that Mookie Betts trade wasn't for nothing. When you trade arguably the best player, certainly one of the best 5 players in baseball, you want to get something back for him. It's going to be in prospects. It's going to be in the future. So Jeter Downs has got to turn into this great player, or that trade's really a failure.
No, that makes sense. And I mean, going back to it, there was 2 things that you said there that made me think. First of all, the Derek Jeter, I couldn't help but think of Anchorman, where he's giving him the ladder and it's like, I hate you, Ron Burgundy. God damn it, do I
respect you.
So that one came to my mind. But I'd be a bit worried with Eovaldi, from what I'm looking at here on the payroll, 17 million. and you're saying he's only had one good year. That's it, wasn't it like a 5-year contract as well?
I mean,
Big risk.
welcome. Sure, of course. Welcome to baseball and welcome to the Red Sox. You know, one of the issues with not just the Red Sox, but in baseball in general is oftentimes you get paid for what you've done and not what you're going to do. And that's changing. And that's part of why the whole Mookie Betts contract situation is different. We saw some of the guys from the Padres get paid. We're seeing more and more of these 10 to 12 to like real mega contracts for really young players. Christian Yelich here in Milwaukee signed a really big one. That's not the norm. It used to be you had to play for your rookie deal for your first, and Joey knows the details, you know, for your first 3, 4, 5 years. Now you're getting paid for those years because you're getting paid for what you could do. Traditionally in baseball, you get paid for what you've done, and that's not always a positive. That doesn't always get you to a good place, unfortunately. And you know, you look at Eovaldi. I mean, even in 2018, I mean, like he was 3-3 with a 3.33 ERA in 12 games, which is fine. He was just dominant in the postseason, and so he turned that into this huge contract, which is great. But like, he didn't really have the track record. So I don't know, you know, they paid him because he had done something for a month, hoping that he was going to still be that pitcher. And he's had injuries, and we're not sure what he is right now.
Also 3-3 with a 3.33 ERA. I mean, that's like an obsessive compulsive dream.
That is all threes.
We'll have to move on from this because time constraints, unfortunately. But I would just like to point out that my favorite players so far have been, well, obviously Bogarts. I'm partial to a bit of JD Martinez. Sawamura really impressed me. I look forward to seeing more of him. And obviously Pavetta had a good little outing. And Hook, as you say, Hook. I don't know how to say it.
I think Houck. Yeah, I'm excited. Like, he's one of those young guys that I'm excited for. And I think that, you know, Pavetta could also be really good too. I mean, he was a big prospect coming up with Washington and then in Philly. And if he can, you know, I mean, obviously he had a good first start, so we'll see what happens.
I think it's if you look past the sort of like again, to say poor me, you know, we didn't get better and all that. This is a rebuild. This is the first year of a rebuild to some degree. Now, because of the privileged position that the Red Sox are in, they'll always be to some degree competitive, even when rebuilding. But I look at these names and I think, you know, Verdugo coming over in trade. You've mentioned Jeter Downs. It's an exciting time if you want it to be. You know, it's all about your own perspective. This could be the start of a brand new journey. And I think you need to give these kids time and you need to start looking at it from a different perspective and be a bit more positive. Because, you know, especially with these kids, it shows. If you're going to the ballpark and you're negative and then it's going to rub off on them. Whereas if you're like, yeah, this is great, all these brand new prospects, they're going to feel that. They're going to feel that energy. And I'm not saying that all Red Sox fans are going to go one way or another. I'm just saying these guys calling in, doing the call-ins, writing off the season after 3 games, get a grip. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and there's a lot of fans who are writing off the season after 3 games. And Richie, you're right, but you're being too logical about fandom. Like, there's a reason the word fan is from fanatic and fanaticism. You know, fans don't want to wait. You lose 3 at home to the Baltimore Orioles, who are supposed to be the worst team in baseball, and it's panic time already. Now, are you right? Should we wait 10 games? Should we wait 15 games and see what happens? Yeah, but we're pretty sure this is going to be a pretty bad season. And Red Sox fans have pretty high expectations, you know, and it's unfair. I mean, we, you know, after having not won a World Series in 86 years, having won 4 in 15 years, all of a sudden switches a fan base. You know, we went from the lovable underdog to the evil empire, even worse than the Yankees. And you're right. We need to be patient this year. We need to take this year as a learning year. But in sports, nobody wants to be patient. Everybody wants to win right now. And so your logic is not flawed. but it's flawed.
No, I get it. I get it. It's just the kind of fan I am.
Absolutely.
I'm happy as long as I'm seeing progress. Um, I'm a happy man. I don't ask too much. If I'm seeing effort and I'm seeing progress, I'm good. But I get it. Like there's going to be different kinds of fans and different kinds of people. But the thing is, it's very difficult for someone like me to understand because baseball is such a long season. I mean, and in football, you lose a game, and for some people, it's like the world's caving in, and that's only a 32 game season, a 38 game season. Sorry. So when you've got like 100 odd games to play with, maybe I'm just a bit more patient because of the cultural aspect, or maybe it's some sort of ignorance. Like I'm not used to it. The only team I've actually followed was the Dodgers last season, and they pretty much won every game that they played. So it wasn't really. This is all new to me. So yeah, as I say, I want to move on. Ballpark, Fenway. This is the second inning. I mean, I feel like we could all wax lyrical on Fenway. It's incredible. But I want to bring in JoBu. What do you think of when you think of Fenway Park?
So Fenway is the stadium that I haven't been to yet that I want to go to. And I'm pretty sure at this point it's going to be the three of us attending a game together because Mitch and I have been talking about this for about 10 years. Obviously, Richie and I have become good friends in the last couple months. So I hope it goes down like that. But it's just, you know, what I've seen on television, obviously, the games I've listened to, books I've read. I hold it in the highest regard for, especially for a stadium I've never been to. I cannot wait to get there.
See, I didn't know you hadn't been to Fenway. So yes, it would be an absolute honor to go to Fenway with you anytime. I would love that. It's very difficult not to just speak for hours on end about Fenway. For me, it was incredible. It is why baseball has such a special place in my heart now. When I first came back, I struggled because watching a game on TV and watching a game live, there is no comparison. I enjoy watching games live now, and I've learned to love that. But growing up as a football fan, you know, the idea of the crowd, it's so important to someone like myself, and I always thought Anfield was special, and it is special. But there's something about Fenway and baseball that all of your senses are. It's just incredible. I can't put it into words. You sit in awe of this structure that you're in, that thousands upon thousands before you have attended, and it's you can feel it. You can feel the history. You can feel the magic. You hear the calls for hot dogs and beers. You hear people razzing the players, and you look up and you see the green monster, and the grass is as green as you've ever seen it. The crowd, the buzzing. You can't explain it. You have to go to Fenway. It's amazing. And then people all sit there and go, well, why aren't you a Red Sox fan? The reason I'm not a Red Sox fan is because they won it all the year that I attended one game, and I don't do that. I would rather go on the journey. The destination means nothing for me if I haven't been on the journey. And maybe with the Red Sox this year, I get to go on that journey. I've already said they're in that position. So obviously I'm going to turn over to Mitch now, and I'm looking forward to what he says about Fenway.
No, I mean, Richie, you described it perfectly. I mean, and that's the thing that I really try to tell Brewers fans is that I love going to Brewers games. I love going to what was Miller Park, but now AmFam Field. But there's no comparison walking into a random game in May in any stadium in America and walking into Fenway. The energy, the buzz that you get from walking up the stairs into Fenway is different from any other park. I've been to Yankee Stadium. I've been to Wrigley Field. I've been to Busch Stadium, some of the other iconic stadiums in that at least are still around, and they're great, but it's not the same. Part of the reason it's not the same, and Wrigley can claim this, but I don't even think Yankee Stadium claims this in the same way, is that it's in the middle of a neighborhood. And when you walk into Fenway, it's not just walking into Fenway, you're walking into the neighborhood. So even when you get off the tee a couple blocks away, or you take a cab, or you walk up, however you get there, the energy starts emanating blocks away from Fenway, which is unbelievable. But then when you walk up the stairs and you see the field and you see the Green Monster, it's such a unique setting. And even the Ivy in Wrigley is great, but it's not quite the same as that Green Monster is. Like, if you haven't seen it in person, and Joey, I can't wait for you to go there at some point in your life. It's so different from anything else you've experienced. But then you're right, Richie, you talk about the history, you talk about the knowledge of the fan base, you talk about that energy of the fan. It's palpable. You can feel it, and it's special. And so Fenway is just like this magical place to take in. I remember taking my wife there for the first time. We were still dating. I don't even know if we were engaged yet or not. I don't think we were. And she was like, it was a random August day. It was a Friday day game. And she was just like blown away. It was phenomenal. So, when they talked about knocking it down, they're just gonna have to keep adding and keep improving and keep building out. I remember going there for years and the infrastructure underneath was crumbling. And how do you fix a crumbling 100-year-old building from underneath, as opposed to knocking it down and building this new beautiful building? Well, you figure it out, because that's what they got to do in Boston. Yeah. So it's it's, you're right. There's nothing like Fenway. It's phenomenal. And anyone who hasn't been there, you got to make, if you're in New York, you make the trip over to Boston. And if you're in Boston, you make sure you get there during baseball season, and you make sure you get to a game.
I think, like you summed it off. As a Liverpool fan, the only thing I've seen that's comparable is Fenway and Anfield. You try and make comparisons with teams, and you think, and it works sometimes and it doesn't. Liverpool are the Boston Red Sox. I'm not just saying it because of the owners, the hard luck stories, winning against the odds, coming back from 3-0 down. Fenway is Anfield. The kind of crazy, passionate fans. Not that all teams don't have them to some degree, but I do just think it's different in Boston. Boston and Liverpool as cities are very comparable as well. No offense to New York. I went to New York. I had a good time there. I was with friends, but I much more enjoyed Boston in terms of as a city. Already turning the Yankees fans against me before episode 5, which will be the New York Yankees episode, but I promise to be more positive about them. But I have to speak from the heart, and yeah. And I think that's a good little stopping point at the moment, because as explained in the previous episodes, we have 40-minute Zoom calls and then we have to stop. So if you'd like to join us again for part 2, that will be probably a brief fans, city, state culture thing, because a lot of the fans in city and state, not so much the state, but we've covered already. So I might just round that off nicely, and then we'll go on to uniforms. But if you'd like to take a break, 7th inning stretch, so in this case 3rd inning stretch, and we'll be back with you. Hello and welcome back. Before the break, we were speaking about the Boston Red Sox payroll, current teams, ballpark, and fan city state and culture is the third inning, because of the amount of depth that we went into in the second inning. We're going to just rush through the third inning. So basically, culture-wise, big thing for me was 4 days in October. The ESPN 30 for 30 documentary, loved watching that. 2004 Red Sox being 3-0 down. We will speak about that later, don't worry. Films to watch, Fever Pitch and Moneyball are the two that stand out. But there is actually a filmed at Fenway wall, and I've actually got my picture taken by it, and it includes Field of Dreams, Blown Away, A Civil Action, Fever Pitch, The Town, Moneyball, Ted, R.I.P.D., Spotlight, Patriots Day, Stronger, The Catcher Was a Spy, and Godzilla, which is a bit of a strange one. But there you go. And I think that pretty much... Oh, well, I suppose if we're talking about culture and that, Boston is a huge sports city. They obviously have the New England Patriots, the Boston Bruins, the Boston Celtics. I'm doing this from memory, so I'm going to mess this up at some point. John Cena.
That's right. That's right. You can't forget John Cena.
Yeah. Well,
Sasha Banks.
The thing is, though, it's easy to forget John Cena every now and then because you can't see him.
That's right. Oh, nicely done, Richie. Nicely done.
So anyway, on that bombshell, we'll move on to number 4. And then number 4 is uniforms. I remember back around late 90s, 2000s, when I first had some interest in baseball, but it didn't take because I didn't have the time to give it. All you saw was Yankees hats, and all of a sudden, the Boston Red Sox hat started to, that big prominent red B started to make its way into Liverpool. And this is long before they had any association with the Red Sox. And now you can't really go to Anfield without seeing a Red Sox or a Patriots cap. So if you are looking for a team and you're a Liverpool fan, I'm not going to say be a Red Sox fan because that's not for me to say, but I would certainly recommend that you at least check out the Red Sox for the reasons that I've already said. And you will find a lot of Boston fans in Liverpool. I can tell you that for certain. I like the uniforms, red, white, blue, grey. I like them all. I like the way they do the Red Sox on when they're at home and the Boston when they're away. That's cool. And in terms of merchandise, there's little green monster baby onesies, which I thought were pretty cute. So, Mitch, what do you think when you think of sort of the uniforms of the Red Sox? Is there anyone that stands out, or?
I mean, just the fact that it's so classic, and they've kept basically the same design forever. We have some of the newer teams that tend to change their uniform every 3 years and are still looking for their identity. I love, not just the Red Sox, also the Yankees, also the Cubs. There are a number of teams that have kept true to their tradition. And I really like that. I like the cap, as you mentioned. I can't tell you how many times I'll be somewhere around the States and somebody will be wearing a B hat and I'll say, "Oh, you Red Sox fan?" And they'll say, "No, I just like the hat." It is, you're right. The Yankees cap, everybody knows the Yankees cap, but the classic B of the Red Sox cap is certainly a strong one in pop culture. So I think, I just think that the classic Red Sox uniform, both home and away, as you mentioned, it's a strength of the identity of the Red Sox fan.
I think there's a lot of Liverpool fans in Boston now as well because of the links between the two teams, and Liverpool have played at Fenway. And when I was at Fenway, I actually saw a couple of Liverpool caps. And there was a nice little moment when we were queuing up to go in. I saw a guy with a Liverpool cap on. He saw my Liverpool t-shirt. It wasn't a jersey. It was just a t-shirt with, I can't remember which one I was wearing, but it has a link to the club. He spotted it, understood what was going on, and just gave me a little tip of the cap and said, "You'll never walk alone." And I thought, yeah, that'll do for me. I like that. All this way away, and there was nice little moment between two fans. Joe, what do you think of when you think of the Red Sox uniforms?
So actually, my favorite part of the Red Sox uniforms, and this only applies to 4 teams in the major leagues: the Red Sox, the Giants, the Yankees, and the Dodgers, is that they're nameless at home. I love that, because if I'm a fan of a team, I know who this team is. So, like, I love the look of just the numbers on the back at home.
Yeah.
I think the Yankees and Dodgers are the only two that are fully nameless, home and away. But that's actually my favorite part of the uniforms, and I have 3 Mets hats, or I'm sorry, Freudian slip there, Red Sox hats. So I've always loved their jerseys. I love the color scheme, the maroon.
The dislike of the Yankees.
Dislike of the Yankees, but my favorite part currently is no names at home. And to piggyback on your point earlier, I love that they wear Boston on the road and Red Sox at home. I've always thought that the city name should be on the road and the nickname should be at home.
Yeah, because you're carrying your city with you, aren't you? Basically, everyone knows the Red Sox in Boston are from. Well, everyone knows either way. It's just nice. I like the image of it. Let's say. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to move on there. 4th inning. I think we've made the most important points. Less is more with uniforms for me. I don't want sponsors. I don't like the Nike ticks. I just want as plain as I can possibly get that is recognizable as that team. And I want the same across all of my sports. I don't need or want all these sponsors. So I'm with you. You know, the name on the back doesn't matter. The number is what matters because you're carrying that number for the Boston Red Sox. So I think that's a really nice touch. And the same for the Yankees and the Dodgers. In a number 5, I had to put food and drink in there. I know JoBu has no problem with this because he loves his food when it comes to the ballparks, especially, and wanted to do a fantasy league with all food names. You're never going to get away from that.
It'll happen at some.
We will make it happen through this podcast. If we build it, they will come. Food and drink, yeah. So I mean, you gotta love it. Like I said before, baseball evokes all the senses, and food and drink are a big part of the ball game. And I've never seen another sport where that's as prominent, and I love it. Why wouldn't you? If you can make food and drink part of the sell of the sport, if you like. It's one of the things that I have no problem with being marketers. I'm not a big guy when it comes to marketing. I think to some degree marketing's evil and it's the downfall of society. But on the other side, I am still a consumer, and food and drink applies to everyone. We all eat and we all drink. So lobster rolls was the big one that stood out for me. Massachusetts loves their lobster rolls. I did actually have one in New England because Connecticut. I've got friends and family in Connecticut. And yeah, it was pretty damn good. So I'd like to try one of them at the ballpark. Was there anything for you, Mitch, when you go?
Yep. So, I mean, I like that you mentioned the lobster roll. I've had that there. Certainly the Fenway Frank is just the traditional hot dog that you get there. But I also love that you can get a bowl of clam chowder. I love my New England clam chowder, and I love that Legal Seafoods is set up there, and that you can get a bowl of clam chowder there. And I love that. So whenever I go to Fenway, I always get a bowl of clam chowder on my way to my seat. And I'll get a Fenway Frank too. And then there's different candies. One of the things I like is that there's a kosher stand. So there's kosher hot dogs there, which I really like. But you're right. I mean, that you can get a lobster roll, that you can get clam chowder, and then a Fenway Frank, and I'm good. I'm set. That's all I need at Fenway.
I'm glad you mentioned there's 2 things there. First of all, the Fenway Frank and the soda were what I went for when I went to Fenway. There was no way I wasn't getting a Fenway Frank. A bit on the pricey side, has to be said, but you know, if you go in there, you just got to do it. It's one of those things. The other thing that you mentioned that was quite important was the kosher option, and they also do gluten-free options as well. I'm going to drop that in there for people with religious and medical needs, for want of a better term. Loads of bars outside and inside. You can also obviously get beer, which is good. I haven't had a chance to look through all the beers. Obviously, Sam Adams is the one that is most associated with Boston that I think of. Maybe I'm wrong there, but that's the one that really stands out to me. And there's a lot of restaurants and cafes nearby, so it's, like I say, it's the whole experience. Unfortunately, like due to time constraints, I didn't really get the full Yorkie Way experience. So that's something that if I went back, I would really want to do. Go and have a few beers and something to eat and things. But in terms of Fenway, I did get to do pretty much everything that I wanted to do. We had to leave slightly after the 7th inning stretch. Again, due to time constraints because of the person I was with, Naomi. She had to get back, kids, things like that. So that's completely understandable. There's no other way I would have left the ball game early. If it was up to me,
right.
You're not catching me leaving any sporting event early unless I really, really have to. So yeah, I'm happy with food and drink. On to the 6th inning.
Real quick, Richie, you bring up a good point. All the food outside of Fenway, again, with all the street vendors and all that, there's tons of great sausages. There's tons of great food on the street there outside of Fenway. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, no worries, especially in these times as well. Help out the local industries. Very important. Here's the fun part. Boston Red Sox legends. I'm going to fire 6 names that stand out to me as someone who, again, has only been to a ballpark once. So apologies if I've missed anyone out or if there's anyone that you want to add. That's the fun of it. Ted Williams. Can't mention the Boston Red Sox without Ted Williams. Cy Young, Cal Yastrzemski, Pedro Martinez, Roger Clemens. I know he was a Yankee and all that, but you still can't go through without mentioning him. And Big Papi, David Ortiz. They're the 6 that stands out for me. Is there anyone that I've missed off that list where you go, no, you can't not mention this guy?
I mean, it's tough because, who won champion, because they had such a long championship drought. It's hard, like to me, Jim Rice is on that list because I love Jim Rice, but I grew up with Jim Rice.
Yeah.
So does that skew that conversation? A guy like Dom DiMaggio was so overshadowed by Ted Williams, but he was a great player in his own right. But then, the guy I think of, and this is, I don't know what fans think of him nowadays. Nomar Garciaparra. I just think of Nomar as and I know they traded him in 2004 to the Cubs, and he led, that trade led to the first World Series. But he was like that guy that bled Red Sox blood and was so entwined with the identity of that team that just I don't know if he's an all-time Red Sox legend. I mean, for a long time, the conversation was Jeter, A-Rod, and Nomar, and they were interchangeable. And Nomar, whether steroids or injuries or whatever, got, his career derailed much more quickly, obviously, than Jeter's or A-Rod's. But I just remember him, and I loved him. Another pitcher, Jim Lonborg, I might put on that list as, a guy who, again, in 67, when they were trying to be, when they were trying to get over that hump, there's lots of names you could throw out, but I think you did a really nice job at, and you're right. Clemens is the one who, man, I was thinking about it because I know that Clemens is on the Red Sox in Joey's Utopian Baseball universe. And man, I loved Roger Clemens on the Red Sox, but boy, did I hate him everywhere else. And maybe that's not a bad thing. But listen, Ted Williams, Yaz, that's the list.
Anything that increases the rivalry between the Red Sox and the Yankees, I'm all for.
Well, and you know, the name you didn't mention is Babe Ruth. Talk
That
about
was
that.
that was a terrible. I was unbelievably remiss to, and
But
at this point as well, I'd also like to mention that I didn't know who Jim Rice was,
that's
but I
okay.
have since found out who Jim Rice was because of the story of the kid getting hit with the
Yeah. I
baseball.
don't know why that's going viral now, but I just saw that I had two different friends post that on LinkedIn. On August 8th, 1982, a kid got hit by a foul ball. There was no way the EMTs were going to get to him in time. Jim Rice goes into the stands, grabs the kid, brings him into the dugout where the Red Sox doctors basically resuscitate him and save his life.
Yeah.
And it's just an unbelievable story that, like, I don't know why it's getting so much attention now. Something must have happened. But like Jim Rice, so Jim Rice is on my list also as a guy. You know, he played there forever. You know, I loved a guy like Dwight Evans, but I don't. You know, I'd have Jim Rice ahead of Dwight Evans. But Babe Ruth, again, you talked about that Red Sox Yankees rivalry, and Babe Ruth obviously is on the list of legends for the Yankees.
Okay.
But Babe Ruth is like, I mean, the curse of the Bambino
Yeah.
and everything. You know, I mean, he was unbelievable for the Red Sox before they sold him to the Yankees. So some great names there, but not a huge long list. You know, I feel like with the Yankees, you go name after name after name
Yeah.
after name. I
But
mean,
does that not make it more special in a way that you've got the?
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes legends get lost with the Yankees because you have like the main ones and then that's it. There's not much of a drop off, but they're not as famous. Whereas with the Red Sox, it was a lot easy for me to just go. They're the main ones. I still missed out a couple, obviously. And
Yeah. I
there's
mean,
obviously
Jimmy Fox, Bobby Dorr, Johnny Pesky. I mean, there's some great
Pesky,
names.
obviously,
Yep.
he comes up later though. I didn't want to mention him
Okay. All
for
right.
obvious. But yeah, uh, just it's fantastic, and it's why I've not why I've fallen in love with baseball again, but another reason why I love baseball because nobody does stories better than baseball. And on that note as well, August 8th, make it Jim Rice Day and link it to all the wonderful health professionals that you have inside and outside the game. Make it something special and link it to baseball. And that'll be another great chapter to add.
I like it. I like it.
Joe, anyone we missed?
So yeah, I mean, we hit all the big ones: Ted Williams, Carl Yastrzemski. I always bring up Tony C just because he was the youngest American League home run champion at age 20. He was the youngest to 100 homers. He had 100 homers by age 22. He took that fastball in the eye at age 22, and his career was basically over. But another name that I don't think we've mentioned yet is Wade Boggs. Wade Boggs, when I was a kid growing up, the guy was hitting 350 like it was nothing. So I know he would later win a championship with the Yankees. I think he retired with the Rays, but Boggs was just the consummate hitter in the 80s growing up for me.
There's a guy I want to name, and I'm not saying legendary status or anything, but he stood out because he gave me something that I've not seen. Wakefield. Was it Tim Wakefield?
Yeah, absolutely. Tim Wakefield, I mean, huge fan favorite for sure.
I just love watching someone pitch like that. As a knuckleball, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's just fun to watch. So I wanted to drop him in. And another one that I saw when I was watching the videos was Daniel Bard, just because that guy can throw, and he was throwing heat when everyone wasn't doing it.
Yeah, and he's the closer in Colorado now, so he's clearly made a career of himself, and he sure would look nice in a Red Sox uniform still.
Do you think the fact, I mean, what I alluded to there, do you think the fact that he can throw that quick is what sort of prolonged his career to some degree? Because like if you can't top out now around those late 90s, you're gonna struggle.
I mean, that's what everybody's looking for in your bullpen, right, Joey?
Yeah. If you can't throw 95 in the bullpen, you're not going to have a very long career in the bigs.
Yeah, speed kills. So legends, sixth inning, feel like we've done good there. Seventh inning is still legends, but it's media legends. I think one of the things is, again, baseball does it better than anyone else. When you talk about commentators, when you talk about people around the sport, baseball seems to have a lot more admiration. And obviously the one that stands out, although not a Red Sox announcer, was Vince Scully. And this kind of should be like the Vince Scully inning, if you like, because he's the guy, and Bob Uecker as well. Especially with Joe, he's not gonna let me say that I'm get away with that one. But they are as big a part of baseball as anyone. And one of the things with me following the Dodgers last year, we talked on the prologue, there's a Portuguese term called saudade, which is kind of like a longing, either for something you can have or can't have. It's too complicated to explain, but it's a nice idea. And I'm saying it's too complicated. I couldn't explain it because I don't fully understand it. Only Portuguese people will be able to really get there. But I had that saudade for Vince Scully. I wanted to hear him call a game. Like, I was watching all these Dodgers games and really getting into it, and I was thinking, like, the guy who's doing it, great job and all that, but I really wanted that, I don't know, that tradition that, you know, you can't replace it. No offense to anyone who's going to try, and you know, they're going to become the names, say 50, 60, whatever years from now that people are talking about now, hopefully. But listening to Vince Scully call games, like I listened to him call the Hank Aaron home run that went past Babe Ruth, and it was poetry. There's just something magical about it. And then at the same time, I was listening to other bits of commentary that were not really great games, but he made you want to watch the game because of the journey that he took you on. And that's kind of why we're doing this. So when I think of Boston, the people that stand out to me, first of all, I've got to say this quick story because Josh, my friend Naomi's husband, will never forgive me if I don't. So Josh Mitchell met Carl Bean, won an essay contest, got to meet him, and Carl actually gave him his World Series ring to wear as a kid. So that was pretty cool, and I had to get that one in there. From a media point of view, I am actually going to study media and that. So Bob Ryan and Jackie McMullen are two really important people in Boston culture, whether you like them or not. This is the thing with the media. Some people like them, some people won't. But yeah, definitely the longevity, the ability they have to tell the stories they do. So as someone far away from Boston, they kind of brought Boston to me, and I really appreciate them for that. The organist for the Red Sox, whose name escapes me, who hopefully one of you two might know or can look up while I'm talking, but he's friends with a friend of the podcast, the other Joey Witt. And there might be something coming from Joey Witt in the future. So I'll leave it there. Now let's see who you got for me.
Well, so I have Josh Cantor as the organist. I don't know if that's who you're thinking of, but that's who comes up on my Google machine. Yep. I mean, the Red Sox have had a ton of famous and influential journalists over the years. Bob Ryan, certainly a general Boston guy, covers everything and does it amazingly well. Dan Shaughnessy, a huge Boston Red Sox writer. Jackie McMullen, more known for NBA and the Celtics, but certainly a great voice of Boston. You know, the one that stands out and jumps out to me right away is Peter Gammons. Peter Gammons, who's a national baseball guy, he really took off as the columnist for the Boston Globe. And I remember every Sunday morning, he would have, you open the newspaper, there'd be one page with no pictures. It was just writing. And Peter Gammons would just write everything about baseball that was on his mind. It was unbelievable for like a young kid learning journalism and learning baseball. It was one of the coolest things that I've ever seen in my entire life. Will McDonough, longtime columnist for the Boston Globe. Joe Castiglione, the radio voice for the Red Sox for like 40 years, did it forever. Jerry Remy, a player for the Red Sox in the early 80s, then quickly went to the booth and has been in the booth, for 30 plus years. Sean McDonough, Will McDonough's son, also did baseball play-by-play on TV for the Red Sox for a long time before he went national. And of course, you got to mention Kurt Gowdy. Kurt Gowdy, play-by-play voice for the Red Sox through the 50s and 60s, just one of the all-time, he's a Hall of Famer, and just tons of names out there of people who went on to national prominence, started in Boston and started as Red Sox reporters.
Yeah, I mean, these are the guys that if you're outside of America and you're not paying attention to the game, you're not really going to know these guys. But these are the guys that when you become a Red Sox fan, they become the most important people in your life.
That's right. That's right. That's a good way to put it.
For me, the reason I mentioned Jackie McMullen and Bob Ryan is because they, like, to some degree, literally, but not obviously literally, but they come into your home over here. We're able to watch around the horn, and we're able to watch, pardon the interruption. So yeah, that's why I mentioned them. Whereas I'm not a Red Sox fan, so I wouldn't be reading the Boston Globe, even though if I do become a Red Sox fan, the first thing I will do is get a subscription for the Boston Globe, because when I do become a fan, all these things are important to me. And I think that's why a lot of people, and I'm not judging anyone for any reason, it's just the journey that I want to go on. A lot of people will go, that's my team. I picked them on MLB, the show, whatever, and I like the uniforms, and that was it. I can't do that because maybe it's linked somewhat to my anxiety. I don't know, but I need to know everything about the team before, and I need to have that connection with them. But once I do get it, I'm fiercely loyal. And as you've seen at the beginning, I'm not one of those like knee-jerk reaction guys. I'll look at the bigger picture. Doesn't mean I won't get angry, because that's part of passion. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean I won't call people out, but I won't do it after 3 games, and I won't, that's just the kind of fan I am. Everyone has their own little journey. For me, doing this and learning all about these people and how important they are, that's exactly why I'm doing it. So all that list of people you've just given me there, that's homework for me.
Nice.
So Joe, you got anyone you would like to add?
I think Mitch nailed it with those names. I forget about Peter Gammons. Peter Gammons, I know primarily as like the ESPN guy in the 80s with Diamond Notes, and then now with MLB Network. But yeah, he started in Boston, and he's one of the top 5 ever as far as just talking about the game, and just incredible. So many names. McMullen, I love Shaughnessy, Bob Ryan. I mean, just amazing names.
Cool. Well, we'll leave it there for now for part 2, because we have 4 minutes roughly remaining. And then when we come back, we will round off with historical moments, the mascots and nicknames, which is a nice little fun way to do it. And then just things I've loved watching since I've been a baseball fan. And then obviously just shout outs, anyone that you wish to say hello to, like the hi mum portion of the show. So yeah, we'll leave it there and come back and join us for part 3. So welcome back for part 3. Unfortunately, due to my digressions, the show's run a bit longer than Mitch was expecting, so I'm going to hand over to him for innings 8 and 9, which are historical moments and nicknames, and he's going to merge that all together. Mascots we can do without him. It's not really a huge thing. If he wants to say a little bit about how he feels about them, then fine. But Mitch, over to you. The show is yours.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Richie. And thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Pleasure.
So historical moments is really hard because there's so many. You take any of the baseball franchises with the history of the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Cubs. I mean, I know a lot of it's bad, but there's still a lot of historical moments. I mean, I don't remember Babe Ruth pitching in the World Series for the Red Sox. But if you look before 1918, the Red Sox won a bunch of World Series, and a lot of it is because Babe Ruth, the pitcher, was there. You then, fast forward ahead to what Ted Williams did in winning Triple Crown after Triple Crown and not winning MVP, and the Yankee bias and the anti-Ted Williams bias because he was a jerk when he played. But he was, last guy to hit over 400 when he played on the last day of the year, and ended up hitting 406 in 1941, which is amazing. You have the 46 season, you have the 67 season, you have the 75 season, you have the 86 season. Joey, hold your tongue. Where the Red Sox were so close to winning championships.
Would that be the Bill Buckner season?
Yeah, 86 was Bill Buckner, but
yeah.
you have double clutches on guys coming around to score. You have fantastic rivalries with Bob Gibson in 67 with the Cardinals. In 75, you have Carlton Fisk's unbelievable home run, but that didn't win the World Series. The Reds ended up winning that World Series. And then you have like the 88, 86, 88 and 90 where Roger Clemens was unbelievable, but he gets kicked out in the first inning of game 1 against the A's one year. And you just have all these moments that lead you up, even before 2004, I'll take the 1999 All-Star game where Pedro started at Fenway, where they brought Ted Williams out to the mound. He was in a wheelchair at the time. And then Pedro was like unhittable. And it was just, again, you talk about Fenway being electric, the way Pedro lit up. 2003, having the Yankees down, thinking you're going to the World Series, and losing, Pedro melting down in game 7, Grady Little melting down. And then Tim Wakefield giving up the home run to Boone. And then 2004, you mentioned it, those 4 days in October, Dave Roberts steals that base. He doesn't steal that base, the season's over. Dave Roberts steals that base, and that changed everything. And then Big Papi went nuts. He just got in the zone, and he carried them. And then they destroyed the Cardinals. I was actually at Game 4 in St. Louis when the Red Sox won the World Series. I remember the game ended. I called my dad, who never thought he'd see the Red Sox win a World Series in his entire life. And then I turned my phone off. I was getting calls. I was getting texts. I didn't want to talk to anybody else. I wanted to talk to my dad, and then I wanted to relish in the moment. And that's what I did. So since 04, it's been a little different. Winning the World Series in 07 and 13 and 18 is all great, but it's like 04 was it. 04, the whole country was cheering for the Red Sox. No one cheers for the Red Sox anymore. Now they're just as bad as the Yankees. They spend as much as the Yankees. They've won as much as the Yankees in the past 15 years. It's not the same. So being there in 04 was unbelievable. The only other one I'll give is when my wife and I started dating, I took her to a Red Sox game. It happened to be Dustin Pedroia's birthday. He hit a home run in the 8th inning, and the whole crowd sang happy birthday to him. And it was this magical Fenway moment. And just regarding into inning number 9, I like the Green Monster mascot. I know a lot of people think it's sacrilege and don't think the Red Sox should have a mascot. I think it's fun. I don't know if it's because I have kids or not. They don't have a Green Monster doll or anything, but I think it's fun that there's a Green Monster mascot. So
yeah, I'm with you.
I'm sure I missed historical moments. I'll let you guys, recap those, and I'll catch it on the flip side. I got to run. But again, Richie, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Joey, thank you so much for inviting me and thinking of me. This has been a blast.
Absolute pleasure. Honestly, it's been fantastic. Went so much better than I could have asked for. Thank you so much for joining us, and don't be a stranger. You'll definitely be back on.
Absolutely. I look forward to it, and I look forward to catching the podcast in the future. I will say one thing, extra innings, what other team would you, obviously I follow the Brewers, but growing up, I was a huge Expos fan. I can't really explain why. Maybe because they were the underdog a lot, so I did like the Expos. They don't exist anymore, and I don't like the Nationals. So I'll give a shout out to the Milwaukee Brewers, because Milwaukee and Boston are the only 2 places on earth that call a water fountain a bubbler. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mitch.
Right. Joe, anything to add?
So as a kid, I forget the year, 84, 85, maybe 86, Roger Clemens' 20 strikeout game against Seattle. It was actually the first thing I ever bought on iTunes in like 2005 for like $2.99. I bought the full game of the Red Sox versus Mariners when Clemens struck out 20 Mariners. One of the reasons I love that game too is that Gorman Thomas, who's my all-time favorite player, was the DH for the Mariners that night, and he homered off Clemens to give the Mariners a 1-0 lead. I think it was in the 5th or 6th inning of that game, but that's my favorite regular season Red Sox moment.
Awesome. Well, I know that you've got to shoot off as well. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, as you always do. I know as well you were up from about 4 o'clock this morning, so I won't take up any more of your valuable time. What's that? It's about what, 7:30 over there?
7:30. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks again, and I'll kind of wrap things up now.
Sounds good. Thanks for a great episode.
No worries at all. So to wrap up, well, first of all, I'd have to say that we were a bit remiss in terms of the nicknames. Obviously, time. The reason I'm putting mascots and nicknames at the end is because it's just a bit of fun. It's a nice way to, end the podcast. Big Papi, I did mention that. The Rocket, he was mentioned, but not his nickname, Roger Clemens. Smokey Joe Wood was one that I enjoyed. Robert Moses Lefty Grove. Now, Lefty, not really huge on that as a nickname, but the fact that he is now almost exclusively referred to as Lefty Grove, that's pretty cool. I like that. My favorite was Dennis Ray Oil Can Boyd, which I believe is because he can just drink everyone under the table, which is just an awesome nickname. And then obviously Pesky was something that I said we alluded to earlier. I didn't really want to put him in as the legends because of this, but maybe I should have. The guy's called Mr. Red Sox. You can't really get a more loving tribute to a career than to be named the one guy who they have decided sums up your whole organization. So absolute credit to him. Yeah, because this is the first show, it's all kind of a bit muddled. Hopefully it hasn't come across that way, but things I loved so far in baseball, in no particular order, even though the top one is the most important for me personally so far. The Angels, Red Sox. See, it's because of the Red Sox show. Angels, White Sox. What an incredible series that was. Shohei Ohtani, the Walsh home run to win that series. Credit to Mercedes, who I believe it was 8 for 8 he went, which is just insane. After 5 for 5, he went straight into my fantasy team. Because I kind of, at this moment in time, I don't really know all that much. So I'm just picking players I like, and he stood out. Albert Pujols, the moment that he had with him on first base when he got that first hit in the majors was special. Phillies, I've got to give props to Zach Wheeler. Any pitcher who can hit, like, please don't take pitches hitting out of the game. I know, I get it. I understand the analytics. I get that people get bored sometimes watching them, but nothing fills me with more joy than watching a pitcher hit when they actually do hit. It's worth it. Trust me, keep it in. I know it's going to go, but I'm still going to rally for it. Castellanos. Can't say his name properly, which is ironic because I'm trying to learn Spanish. Yeah, awesome. He's just been a hitting machine. And I love the passion he showed when he got to home base. And yeah, I believe there was some expletives. So what? It's a game. It's passion. Let it go. If he gets suspended for that, it's ridiculous, in my opinion. The Reds, really exciting. I thought the Cardinals were going to smash them after the first game. Couldn't have been further from the truth. The Marlins, their mariachi band is my partner's favorite thing so far in baseball. She really loved that. And Chisholm, it's not just, he stands out the blue hair and all that, but he's just exciting, man. He's got speed along the base paths. He can hit. I'm going to enjoy watching him. Blue Jays, better than expected defense. I believe a lot of that is down to Marcus Semien. I think when you bring in a player with his defensive ability, it rubs off on the whole team and obviously improves the whole team. And Julian Merriweather, outstanding. What a start he's had as the closer. Again, went straight into my fantasy team. But that was literally, as I was watching it, I was like, yeah, he's going in. Brewers come back on opening day was special. One of the big moments where you're so happy that the crowd are back in to witness that. Royals, as far as fans go, they get the nod for this week. Huge. That first inning was insane. Ended up 5-5. And the crowd were brilliant. To be 5-0 down and give that kind of love after Benintendi had made an error for him to then make the catch and get that kind of love that they gave him, that was a special moment for me. Rockies upset on opening day against the Dodgers. Didn't really get much else going after that, but credit to them and really enjoyed watching that. They just played what, as a beginner, if you like, looked like pretty fundamentally sound baseball. They gave themselves a chance to win the game. A lot of mistakes from the Dodgers, but credit where it's due to the Rockies. Mariners, opening day, the 8-7, really good game. Credit to the Giants as well. It takes two teams to make a game of that quality. Loved the look of Kikuchi. Think he's going to be a favourite of mine. Padres were absolutely electric in their opener. So many players, too many players to pick out. Hopefully, Fernando Tatis is okay after that shoulder injury. And probably the most iconic moment of opening day was Cabrera hitting the home run in the snow. Just so much. I'm absolutely loving baseball. If it's like this all the time, man, you people are spoiled. I've got to give Badu credit as well. As I said to Bafflips and Nerds, he was the guy who I picked to hit the first home run. I was between him and Cabrera. I outthought myself, went with Badu, and then was gutted because of that outthought myself. But I was made up to see him do what I thought he could do with his first at bat. Really special moments. So many of them. I've probably missed loads, but you know, baseball's awesome. Thank yous to wrap up the show. Obviously, thank you to Mitch. Absolutely incredible guest. Could not have asked any more from him. Thank you to Flyball to the Moon, one of the first people to follow us. Hopefully we'll have them on at some point. Bafflips and Nerds, who I've already spoken about. Really good podcast to check out for, really good follow, I should say. Dugout Classics have agreed to send me a baseball card for each of the 30 teams. Thank you so much for that. I didn't go fishing for it. It's not what I was after, but yeah, I'll take that all day long. Really nice. Check them out. They sell jerseys, hats, and baseball cards. Oh no, they don't sell hats, sorry. They sell jerseys and baseball cards. I was looking for hats and I went to them. But anyway, the Journeyman pod, something that has caught my eye. It's an Australian pitcher who went to, I can't remember whether it was Japan or South Korea, but like, because I really want to get into Japan and South Korean baseball, KBO and Nippon League, I think they call it. So yeah, really looking forward to checking that podcast out. Ross Tipe, an Astros fan. If you know anything about me, I'm not a huge Astros fan, but anyone who gives respect gets respect, and it was nice speaking to him. Baseball Brit, again, the Korean link there, and Tom Musa for Japan, and then our very own Joey Witten, the definition. Peter Marlin, Angels Over the Pond, LA, UK, Blue Jays dad, and Charlie B, who's a Mariners fan. I think that pretty much sums it all up. I'm sorry if that was all dull or a list or whatever, but it's really important to me to say thank you to the people who've allowed me to start taking my tentative steps in this baseball community / family. And yeah, I really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll get to have some, if not all of them, on the show in the future. I'm not going to do this every episode, don't worry. It's just like, it's important when you're starting off to give credit where credit's due. So thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed our Red Sox episode. Thank you as always to JoBu. Thank you again to Mitch. And if you want to learn any more about these wonderful Twitter followers or ourselves, then you can find us at Screwball JoBu. And I think that's it. So until next time for the Tampa Bay Rays episode, thanks for joining us.